welcome to the podcast. I'm excited y'all are here today. Would you like to introduce yourself and we'll get started there?
Beth McCormick.
I'm Keith Roberts.
Awesome. And y'all have vintage caramel wine here in Huntsville. Before we kind of dive in and talk a little bit about the wine shop and all of that, talk a little bit about your backgrounds. Are y'all originally from Huntsville? Did you move to Huntsville? Or kind of talk a little bit about your journey prior to opening up the wine shop?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I grew up in Huntsville and went to Grissom High School. Moved away and swore I'd never come back.
Yeah, like most people do. Huntsville's not cool enough. There's more things out there. I want to live somewhere else.
And it wasn't that cool when I was a kid, right? I mean, it wasn't that much to do. It's a much more interesting place, a lot more fun now than it was when I was younger. But yeah, moved away, went to Auburn, got an engineering degree, and moved to Atlanta, lived there for a while. And then ended up, found myself back here, starting a family in 1997 and been back ever since.
Okay.
All right. Yes, I've been here since 1982, except for a brief time that I had moved off as well. Went to New Hope High School. Same thing. Moved away, said I'd never come back. Came back. I've been here ever since. Love it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like obviously with the background in engineering, and what is your background in prior? Education. So like, I mean, though those are two different things, very different than opening up a wine shop and opening up a small business. When has wine always been a passion for both of you, and kind of has learning about wine been something you've enjoyed, or is that something that kind of right prior to opening the wine shop, you started kind of educating yourself on?
Oh, absolutely. We've been together about 10 years, and that was part of our dating experiences. We would go to wine tastings all the time. And I don't think either of us had really drank a lot of wine before that.
Yeah.
And so we just really enjoyed going to the tastings and learning about wine and learning what we did and didn't like. And I think that was where it started. And we just had a conversation like, we could do this. And one day we woke up and here we are.
Wow. So when did you initially have this idea of like, there's like one thing to like wine and enjoy drinking wine. I think I enjoy wine. I don't know much about it. My education level on wine is very, very low. I know like I like reds and I like them dry, and that's about it. And so I know I can go in and order a Pinot Noir and be pretty okay most of the time.
Right.
And just depending on what I'm looking for. But most of the time, Pinot Noir is a good, safe bet for me. But you to have this passion and enjoy, and you both enjoyed wine, to actually say like, let's open up a store. Was that a quick flip of the switch, or did it take a little bit of convincing from either of y'all's parts to each other to say like, let's actually do this?
Well, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm sure we'll both have similar answers, but I think it was definitely a slow burn over several years where we just kept talking about, kept revisiting it, right? But as you get further along in your life, you start to realize how time's running out. If you're going to do these sorts of things, it's time to execute. And then, of course, Beth owns the Cottage Collective, which is a gift shop there next to Rosie's, and the suite next door to that came available. The timing was pretty good.
Yeah.
So we just thought, well, if we're going to do this, it's time to do it. So we just went for it.
Yeah. And so so I guess the Cottage Collective was your first sort of entrepreneurial venture, or did you have any other sort of business ventures prior to that?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life.
Oh, wow.
So I designed children's clothes for 19 years.
Okay.
And that is what led me to selling my stuff here locally. So I started selling at it used to be Mint Julep Market. Mm-hmm. And I was with Mint Julep Market for 6 years, and then she was ready to sell, the previous owner. And so I bought it, changed the name, rebranded, and we had already been talking about trying to do wine at some point, but it was going to be in the future.
Okay.
And so we decided, hey, this is our store now. Why don't we just put like a small shelf of wine that can be used in gift baskets, whatever. And we just started out slow like that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously, like that was probably a great timing for y'all, because like you said, you took over that space, you could kind of make it your own thing, and you have the kind of the canvas to do it. And I'm assuming that wine, adding that little bit of wine, kind of the people that were enjoying the Cottage Collective were enjoying having that wine, and you started seeing some good feedback probably from that.
Right, and that kind of gave us a little more comfort to know that we could take it to the next level. because there was that interest.
Yeah.
And with South Huntsville is growing right now, of course. There's a lot more, but there weren't that many opportunities and still not that many opportunities. So it just gave people a place to be able to come in and say, hey, this is a unique selection. I don't see this when I'm at the grocery store.
Yeah. So. And I mean, like you said, South Huntsville I grew up in South Huntsville, lived there my entire life pretty much, and lived in the same house pretty much my entire life. And it was always 3 things to go out to eat. It was chicken, chicken, or chicken. And that's what it's and like, though it's continuing to grow and there's continuing to be more options, offering a place to have wine and a place to have a nice drink before dinner. And now there's even dinner places on that side of town that are nicer dinner options, like Tom Brown's and stuff like and Amerigo's over there. So having other options that, you're able to kind of have that stop in at the wine shop, have a glass of wine before dinner someplace, or have a glass of wine after dinner someplace. So you go from, okay, this wine's working, people are enjoying this space comes available. Around what year was the initial, like, hey, I got this space, let's start building out what vintage caramel wine is?
Was that 22? 22.
Okay.
We started.
Yeah, I guess we decided in the spring of 22.
Spring of 22.
And then we took over the lease in, I guess, September 1st.
And then how long was that build out process from like taking over the lease to actually being able to open the doors? Was it what you expected? I mean, I'm seeing from the look on your face, it probably wasn't what you expected. Maybe it took a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's like anything, right? It's always more expensive and it takes longer than you expect.
Yeah.
So, but, we went into it just full steam ahead and just didn't look back. There was no, once you start paying that bill, right, it's like, okay,
well, let's get the doors open as quickly as we can.
Yeah, we got to execute. And so we went down there every night and every weekend, and I would get off from work and we would lay down floors. It took us almost a month, actually a little over a month, to lay down the floors in there.
Wow. So how long was the whole process?
It was about 3 months.
3 months. Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's a fairly quick turnaround, but I mean, it probably, I don't know if it maybe felt like that for y'all during that that process. If you're like, this is just taking forever, like the floors are taking forever, this is taking forever. But I mean, from a 3-month process of saying this place is empty to then being able to open your doors, what was that initial sort of response from, hey, we have a little bit of wine in the Cottage Collective to now we have a wine shop? What was that sort of response from some of your loyal customers at the Cottage Collective, as well as new customers that were coming in to just visit the wine shop for the first time?
It's been very well received. We've been, the community, I feel like, has really embraced having the studio there. It being called a studio, people are curious, like, what can you do in a studio?
Yeah.
But you have anything to contribute?
No, and I was kind of thinking back on what that transition from, hey, we've remodeled this place to, hey, we're open and we're selling wine. It was not a super smooth transition. I remember, and Greg loves to tell that story about the time he walked in, and I was still in the back, like painting a wall or something, and they walk in. This is some friends of ours now. Walked in and said, hey, can we get some wine? I was like, oh, yeah. We weren't really used to having customers yet, right? So it was just kind of cool. And then it ramped up from there. But that was, we opened in the holidays in December of 22.
Which is probably perfect timing to open up I would assume from just the traffic itself, and you have a ton of people that are visiting home that maybe don't live here full time, that maybe are more used to going to a place like y'all's place to actually have a glass of wine that maybe didn't have, because South Huntsville, it's a fairly new concept for South Huntsville. Right. It's not even, I would almost say it's a fairly new concept for Huntsville in general. There's not a ton of wine shops, wine studios, especially places that just do wine. Talk a little bit about sort of that experience for the customers, because I've had a ton of family that's gone there, friends that have gone there, but I myself honestly have not actually had the opportunity to go. Now I'm going to have to. Yes. I'm like, I might even have to stop by on the way home. And so talk a little bit about that experience and like what the customer, as they walk into the door, is greeted by, and sort of that process. Because I know on the website there's like 4 different sort of things that a customer can enjoy or do when they walk into the studio.
Right. Well, I will get to your question, I do believe, if I don't redirect me. But we wanted to create a space where we would want to hang out. We spent a lot of time actually going to different wine bars. Anywhere we would travel, we would go to different places, and we would be, like, oh, I love this, or no, this feels. And so we wanted to create a space, an almost intimate space where you could come in and enjoy a glass of wine with a friend. And we've created all these different seating areas, and it almost has like a living room feel.
Okay.
So it doesn't feel like a bar. It really doesn't feel like any place that I've ever gone. But every time I'm there, I want to be there. I want to hang out there. We always say, I wish that we were customers here.
Yeah, I wish I was off the clock right now.
Right,
a glass of wine.
Exactly. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. I think so, because I think, I think for some people, even for a lot of people maybe my age that maybe are listening to this, they can sometimes get discouraged from going into a place that maybe they just don't know much about. And I think creating that space that's, not necessarily familiar, but doesn't feel like you have to come a certain way there to enjoy the glass of wine. You can come just after work. You can like a whole day of shopping, you can come and have a glass of wine after you're shopping. And so I think for people listening that maybe are my age, that's like, well, I don't know much about wine. What do I do, or how do I experience it for the full potential? Like, or do you help the guests kind of walk them through, like, hey, what are some things you like? Is there tasting options for them? Because I know flights are a big part of what you do as well.
Right. Well, our menu is a little different in the sense that you can come in anytime. We rotate our menu weekly.
Okay.
So you can come in and try something different pretty much every time you come in the door. And whether that be a glass, a flight, and we do tastings certain days of the week, but it just gives people I always say a flight is the best thing to do, because it's a 3-ounce commitment if you don't like it.
For sure.
But it might get you out of your comfort zone to try something new that you wouldn't normally try. So.
And I would assume that you probably a lot of people too, that as they come in and do a tasting and they find either like a maker that they like or a certain kind of wine they like, that you see them coming in on a regular basis more often to get a bottle of wine to go home or stuff like that. I talk a little bit too about that. I think it's like the wine club that you have, and how that process works. It was a little bit more of a unique structure than that I've seen before.
Right. You want
to? So we call it our wine circle, but it's a wine club, and we meet the last week of every month, and we do a geographically themed tasting typically. So we go to great pains to select 8 wines that we think our customers are going to really enjoy, and maybe learn something new, get to try something new. And it's an experience where they come in and they sign up ahead of time. You come in and sit down, and we bring the wines to them, talk about it for a few minutes. I always have a map, that shows them exactly where the wine is from, so they can sort of connect to the location. So we do that the last week of every month, and to be in the wine club, you just have to come to 6 of those in a year.
Okay, and there's no, and I want to say, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no sort of like yearly commitment. You're just paying per the classes that you go to.
Correct.
And you have to go to at least 6 to be in the
Correct.
Thing. Gotcha. And I thought that was a unique thing too, because it's like oftentimes there's a yearly fee plus this fee plus this fee plus this fee, and you're like, well, I haven't even bought a bottle of wine yet. That like by the time I get done with this, I can't afford a bottle of wine. Like I've spent so much money to try it. If I actually like it, like, okay, well, I'll take a photo. Maybe next year I'll get a bottle.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that the tastings that we kind of learned when we started our wine journey, was going to tastings where you'll stand in line and somebody's pouring the wine, and you go up there and get a tasting of it, and then you go back to your seat and taste. Which we do some of those, but our weekly tastings and our wine circle tasting, we do it, you call it tableside, right? Where we walk up and bring the wines to you. So you can just hang out and relax with your friends. So.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not, constantly getting up and coming back to your seat and getting up. We just want you to be relaxed when you're there. So we will bring it to you.
Yeah. And so how do you go about, you open up your doors, you kind of select the initial wines, but then to change wines as often as you do and have a new selection, how do you go about sourcing wine, and what does that actually look like on a, say, monthly basis?
We spend a lot of time looking at portfolios, wine portfolios. Not so much him, but I get the opportunity to taste a lot of wines. The reps will bring different things for us to taste. We started out with some core things that we knew that we liked, and we just have built onto that. And now some of the wines that we liked in the beginning, we're way past that. We have totally different palates now. So that's always fun. And neither one of us have been foodies ever, but now I have a new appreciation for food and wine. So when I go into tasting something, I'm like, oh, this would be really nice for our customers that I know that they like to grill or they like seafood or so.
Yeah. And because I would assume too that, as you've opened up, have the doors open now, I guess we're going on 2 years in December or so.
Right.
That your clientele has also kind of grown with you, and as your palate's also grown and you've changed, maybe theirs has too, and you're offering, or you're able to also showcase to them things that they've never tried before, or like they never would have ever tried, because it's like, oh, I don't like that kind of wine. I had a wine like that, 2 years ago, and I swore I'd never drink that one again. And you're able to be like, well, you should try this. I think you might like it. And you're able to completely change their scope of like, hey, this is a wine that I never thought I would ever get, but now I'm buying it by the case, or I love this thing now.
Right.
As far as, so like, I know probably one question that a lot of people will ask if listening to this or watching this is do you all have food, or is food being able to be brought in, or what does that look like as people maybe want to like have something to snack on while they have some wine?
Right. We do have a menu,
Okay.
And we try to keep it just wine-based foods. It's a nice menu. We do flatbreads, charcuterie, hummus, pita. You can pretty much have a meal there.
Okay.
We don't allow outside food, so it's all done in-house. Yeah. But yeah, developing that menu over the past year has been a lot of fun too, especially, like I said, just learning how different things pair with wine.
And as you've now kind of become a foodie and kind of experienced how the food and wine pairs well together, how does that change when y'all go out to dinner at places, and the experience that y'all now are able to have because of your appreciation for the wine, because of having the studio?
Are you a foodie now?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would describe us as foodies, but we do pay attention to that now when we go. I mean, there's places in town that we love to go. I mean, there are plenty of people that came before us that have kind of laid the groundwork for the wine culture here in Huntsville, and we really enjoy going to those places. So just like everybody else, we love to get a charcuterie board and pick out the cheeses and all the items that are going to go best with the wine. So,
and I would assume too, as you all, I think 2 weeks ago when we were talking about scheduling this podcast, you were in Italy and like having that hike. What's the experience like of like going someplace like that and like seeing vineyards and seeing these huge productions of wine at that scale, and then coming back and being able to either maybe, I don't know if you're all able to showcase some of the stuff that you like had, or like what was that experience like?
One, it was insanely beautiful. The whole experience, just all the senses are delighted.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful. And even though we are limited with certain wines that we can have, we were able to taste, definitely some varietals that we know that we want to put in front of our customers so that they can enjoy it.
Yeah. And then I with changing your menu weekly, how far in advance do you typically like, are you already planning what August is going to look like? Or are you looking at wine for the shop as maybe like what's in 2 weeks?
I would say more like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yes. It's certainly a challenge.
Yeah.
And two, it is kind of hard to plan that far in advance, because we're not buying cases and cases and cases of one particular wine. And so we kind of have to make sure that the inventory is there before we commit to bringing that in.
Makes sense. And so as now you have both the Cottage Collective and you have the studio, how do you balance your time between the two? And is there things that you, obviously, like that was kind of, you took over that space and you became the owner of the Cottage Collective, to then now having the studio too? Like, is there things that you didn't know when you started the studio that you thought you might have known because you already had an entrepreneurial venture prior?
I don't know that it is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It is a lot of work, but I thrive better when I'm busy and in a working type environment. one thing that was on the fortunate side is the Cottage Collective kind of runs itself at this point because it's an established business. I don't even need to be there on the day to day. Everyone there does what needs to be done. And we are fortunate enough on the Vintage Karma side to have a really good team as well. And so, it doesn't come without challenges, but I don't know. Can you help here?
Yeah, she's incredibly busy, and that's a good thing. But there's a threshold to everything. So
for sure,
and I feel like we've bumped up against that threshold a few times over the past year. But now that, like she said, we've got a staff that we can depend on now, we can actually go to Italy for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
week and a half. So
and there's definitely there's sort of two things as being an entrepreneur and business owner. It's like working in the business and working on the business, and being able to now kind of have the team that you have at both places, that in the business being there, you're not having to really not necessarily do as much, but you can kind of limit your time there while you're able to then kind of think ahead for each business. Like, what are some future things we want to do for the Cottage Collective? What are some future things we want to do for Vintage Karma? And then being able to then also know that your team has the day-to-day. The team will keep the boat afloat, and we're okay. We can go on a vacation. We can enjoy Italy. We can enjoy this. We can enjoy that. We can come do a podcast on a Tuesday and not worry about stuff. But as the business continues to grow, there's always new obstacles and hurdles to go over.
Right.
As we were recording this halfway through 2024, what are some future kind of last 6 months of the year plans for the studio?
She's always got a new idea. And we'll just be on a walk or something, and she whips out some new ideas. Like, okay, let's get this thing straight before we head down that path. But she's always coming up with something. And I won't list them now because we'd be committed to it. But go ahead. What is floating to the top right now?
I'm not really sure how to answer that, but I do know that just being an entrepreneur, that my brain is always in a state of moving forward and not getting comfortable with where you are, because once you get comfortable, you're already behind.
For sure.
And so I do tend to do that, and I will probably throw out 17 to 20 ideas, and hopefully 2 of them will stick. But I think right now one goal for me, and I'm saying this without even talking to him about it, is I want to continue to grow our wine circle. I think that is where I'm just really enjoying that, because we went into this not being wine. We don't claim to be wine experts. And so for us, we're getting to learn right along with you. And so I'm really enjoying that. And even our trip to Italy, that was really just very eye-opening for me, because I was able to take some of those things that I had learned, and then I could see it. And now I know how to,
explain it a little bit better to that person.
Exactly. And so I get really excited about that. I get excited about sharing. So.
Yeah. And so as far as the wine circles is if anyone's listening, is there a certain time of the year that they have to they can join, or can they join at any time? If they're listening to this right now, could they sign up for a tasting at the end of July or at the end of August?
They could. And we always allow people to, just sign up and come, and you make the decision whether this is for you or not.
Yeah.
So we never want anyone to commit blindly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if anyone's listening and they want to have a flight of wine, they want to have a glass of wine, they want to go home with a bottle of wine, or they just want to see your stuff on social media or online, where's the best place to find you and everything?
Instagram for sure. Yes. Okay. And I do keep the website pretty updated, but Instagram is something that I focus on every single day.
Perfect. And we'll have links to everything in the episode notes or in the description of the video. So if you're listening or watching, you can definitely visit those and find out more about Vintage Karma wine. But I appreciate you being here. It's taking the last little bit to talk about your journey as entrepreneurs and kind of the journey of the wine studio. And I continue to look forward to the success you'll have in Huntsville for years to come.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Yes. This is great.